Sarah received a video call from her mother asking to borrow $5,000 for an emergency. The voice, face, and mannerisms were perfect. Her actual mother called hours later, confused. The first call was a deep fake. Sarah's trust in video evidence of her own mother had been weaponized. Imagine living in a world where video and audio recordings, historically the strongest forms of evidence for what actually happened, can be fabricated so convincingly that experts struggle to detect manipulation. Where seeing someone say or do something on camera no longer proves they actually said or did it. This isn't hypothetical future. Deepfake technology has advanced to the point where synthetic videos, audio recordings, and images are indistinguishable from authentic ones without specialized detection tools. The implications extend far beyond individual deception into fundamental questions about how societies establish truth and shared reality. We're entering an era where "I saw it with my own eyes" no longer carries evidentiary weight, where video documentation of events can be dismissed as potential fabrication, where the psychological anchor of visual evidence, something humans relied on for establishing reality throughout history, has been systematically undermined by artificial intelligence. Today we're examining how deepfake technology is creating a crisis of epistemic trust, why the inability to verify what's real creates profound psychological and social consequences, and what happens when societies lose the shared evidentiary foundations necessary for collective decision-making and social cohesion. Before we begin, we're analyzing documented deepfake capabilities while exploring their psychological and social implications. This content examines technological impacts on truth and trust for awareness purposes, not to create anxiety about reality or encourage paranoia about media authenticity. If you're experiencing distress about distinguishing reality from fabrication, or anxiety about information trustworthiness, please speak with mental health professionals who can provide appropriate support. The goal is informed awareness, not destabilization of your sense of reality. Throughout human history, seeing was believing. Video and audio recordings provided documentary evidence that events actually occurred. Legal systems, journalism, and social trust were built on the assumption that visual documentation represented reality. Deepfake technology has systematically eliminated this evidentiary foundation. Current deepfake systems can generate videos of anyone saying anything with near-perfect accuracy in voice, facial movements, and contextual details. The technology requires only minutes of source footage to create convincing fabrications that fool human perception without specialized analysis. If this examination of how deepfake technology undermines evidence and truth is revealing implications you hadn't considered, hit that like button. It helps YouTube understand that content analyzing technology's impact on reality and trust deserves wider reach. And if you're concerned about how AI-generated media affects our ability to know what's real, subscribe to Future Paradox. We're investigating how emerging technologies challenge our understanding of truth, evidence, and shared reality. The problem isn't just that individual videos can be faked. It's that the existence of deepfake technology casts doubt on all video evidence. Authentic recordings can now be dismissed as potential fabrications, creating plausible deniability for actual documented behavior. What if deepfake technology doesn't just enable new forms of deception, but destroys the evidentiary value of authentic documentation? Real recordings of actual events can be disputed as possible fakes, eliminating accountability for documented actions. Legal systems worldwide struggle to adapt to evidence that can be fabricated convincingly. Video testimony, security footage, and documentary evidence, previously considered highly reliable, must now be treated with skepticism that fundamentally changes how justice systems establish truth. The psychological impact extends beyond individual deception. When people cannot trust their primary method for establishing what actually happened, seeing visual documentation, it creates foundational anxiety about reality itself and undermines the shared evidentiary basis necessary for social cohesion. Deepfake technology has become a political weapon used to fabricate statements by public figures, create false evidence of events that never occurred, and manufacture context-free clips that appear to show leaders saying or doing things completely contrary to their actual positions and actions. What if the 2024 election cycle demonstrated how deepfakes undermine democratic processes? Fabricated videos of candidates spread faster than fact-checking can address them, creating lasting impressions based on events that never happened, while authentic footage can be dismissed as potential manipulation. The weaponization isn't just creating false evidence, it's destroying trust in authentic evidence. Politicians caught in actual misconduct can claim videos are deepfakes, using the existence of the technology to create plausible deniability for documented behavior. International conflicts increasingly feature deepfake propaganda, creating false documentation of atrocities, peace agreements, or military actions. The inability to trust video evidence of international events undermines global institutions that depend on shared understanding of what actually occurred. What if deepfakes make it impossible to establish shared reality about political events? When different populations can be shown convincing but completely contradictory video evidence of the same events, democratic deliberation based on common factual foundations becomes impossible. The technology enables creation of perfect political attack videos fabricating any statement or action, while simultaneously providing cover for dismissing authentic documentation as potential manipulation. This dual effect systematically destroys the evidentiary basis for political accountability. What if we've entered permanent epistemic crisis where establishing truth about public events requires specialized expertise most citizens lack? Democratic participation depends on citizens' ability to evaluate evidence, but deepfakes make evidence evaluation impossible. Without technical analysis, most people cannot perform or access. Deepfake technology enables unprecedented forms of personal exploitation and manipulation. Criminals create convincing videos or audio of family members in distress to extract money, fabricate compromising content for extortion, or generate synthetic identities for fraud schemes. What if your voice, face, and behavioral patterns can be replicated so accurately that people who know you intimately cannot distinguish authentic communication from AI-generated fabrication? The psychological violation extends beyond financial loss into fundamental breaches of identity and trust. Revenge porn has evolved into deepfake pornography, where victims' faces are convincingly placed into explicit content they never participated in. The psychological trauma combines violation with the impossibility of proving the content is fabricated to everyone who sees it. Professional reputation destruction through fabricated videos showing people engaged in unethical, illegal, or socially unacceptable behavior creates damage that persists even after content is debunked. The initial impression shaped by convincing deepfakes often remains despite later correction. What if the existence of deepfake technology means you can never fully protect your image, voice, or identity? Any public-facing content provides source material for convincing fabrications, making participation in digital society inherently vulnerable to identity manipulation. Financial fraud using deepfaked video calls or audio messages impersonating executives, family members, or trusted individuals has caused millions in losses. The technology exploits the deep human trust in recognizing familiar voices and faces. The psychological impact of discovering you were deceived by a perfect replica of someone you trust creates lasting trauma around epistemic certainty. If you cannot trust your ability to recognize your own mother's voice or face, what remains as reliable anchor for reality? Shared reality depends on populations agreeing about basic facts regarding events that occurred. Deepfake technology enables creation of completely contradictory, but equally convincing, video documentation, fragmenting societies into groups experiencing fundamentally different versions of events. What if we're witnessing the end of collective truth establishment processes that held societies together? When different populations can be shown convincing evidence supporting incompatible versions of reality, social cohesion based on shared understanding becomes impossible. The technology doesn't just create false information, it destroys the mechanisms societies use to distinguish true from false. Fact-checking becomes meaningless when authentic and fabricated content are indistinguishable without expertise most people lack. Trust in institutions depends on those institutions' ability to establish what actually happened through evidence evaluation. What if deepfakes make institutional truth determination impossible without specialized technical analysis that most institutions cannot afford or access? The psychological experience of living without reliable evidence creates profound anxiety and decision-making paralysis. When you cannot determine what's real, every choice based on information becomes a gamble on potentially fabricated foundations. What if social trust, the foundation for cooperation, democratic governance, and collective action, requires shared evidentiary standards that deepfakes have made obsolete? Societies may fragment into groups that accept different evidence as reliable based on tribal affiliation rather than objective verification. The younger generation growing up assuming all media could be fabricated may develop entirely different relationships with evidence and truth than previous generations who assumed visual documentation represented reality. This generational epistemic divide could reshape how societies function fundamentally. Detection technology struggles to keep pace with deepfake generation capabilities. By the time detection systems identify current manipulation techniques, new generation tools produce fakes those systems cannot recognize. The arms race between creation and detection currently favors creation significantly. What if verification of authentic content becomes so technically complex that it requires expertise beyond what ordinary citizens, journalists, or even institutions can access? Truth determination becomes a specialized technical service, rather than something people can evaluate directly. The cost and time required for proper deepfake detection means that by the time content is verified or debunked, its impact has already occurred. Fabricated videos spread globally within hours, while verification takes days or weeks, making correction functionally useless. Even when deepfakes are identified and debunked, the psychological impact of initial exposure persists. People who saw convincing fabricated content retain impressions shaped by that content despite later learning it was fake, creating lasting effects that correction cannot fully reverse. What if the solution, requiring all media to carry cryptographic authentication, creates surveillance infrastructure that tracks and verifies all digital communication? The cure for deepfakes may involve loss of privacy and communications freedom worse than the manipulation problem it solves. Individual citizens lack both technical capability and resources to verify content authenticity, creating dependence on third-party verification services whose trustworthiness itself cannot be easily evaluated. The verification problem simply moves to a different level. Humans psychologically require anchor points for reality, reliable ways to establish what actually happened versus imagination, memory distortion, or fabrication. Visual evidence historically served this function. What happens psychologically when that anchor disappears? What if living without reliable evidence creates chronic low-grade anxiety about reality that affects mental health, decision-making, and social functioning? The inability to trust one's primary reality verification mechanism may have psychological costs we're only beginning to recognize. The distinction between healthy skepticism and paralyzing paranoia becomes unclear when genuine threats to evidence reliability exist. Questioning whether content is authentic becomes rational caution rather than conspiracy thinking. But this rational doubt can escalate into inability to accept any evidence as real. What if deepfakes don't just enable specific deceptions, but fundamentally alter human psychology around truth and evidence? Growing up assuming all media could be fabricated may create cognitive and emotional relationships with information completely different from previous generations. The social consequences extend beyond individual deception into breakdown of collective decision-making processes. Democracies require citizens to deliberate based on shared understanding of facts, but deepfakes make shared factual foundations impossible to establish reliably. What if we're entering an era where establishing truth requires technical expertise that creates new forms of epistemic inequality? Those with resources for verification services can know what's real while others navigate manufactured realities, creating stratification based on access to truth itself. Deepfake technology represents more than advanced fraud or sophisticated propaganda. It's the systematic destruction of humanity's primary method for establishing shared reality and collective truth. When seeing is no longer believing, societies lose the evidentiary foundations necessary for justice, democracy, and social cohesion. We're witnessing not just technological advancement, but fundamental transformation in how humans can know what's real. The psychological implications extend from individual anxiety about evidence to collective inability to establish shared understanding of events that actually occurred. What we're losing isn't just trust in specific videos or audio recordings, but the broader capacity for establishing collective truth through evidence evaluation. This loss may reshape human societies more profoundly than the specific deceptions deepfakes enable. The most concerning aspect isn't that individual pieces of content can be fabricated, but that the existence of deepfakes casts doubt on all evidence, making authentic documentation dismissible and creating epistemic crisis that undermines social institutions depending on shared reality. What do you think? Can societies function without reliable evidence? And here's what troubles me most. If we cannot trust our primary method for verifying what actually happened, what replaces it as the foundation for shared truth and collective decision-making? If this analysis made you consider how deepfakes undermine evidence and shared reality, subscribe for more examinations of how AI technologies challenge our understanding of truth, trust, and social cohesion. And hit that like button if you believe these questions about evidence and reality deserve serious consideration. Until next time, remember, maintaining healthy skepticism while avoiding paranoia requires resources for verification and communities for reality checking. What we explored examines real deepfake capabilities and their social implications through evidence-based analysis. This content encourages informed awareness about media manipulation, not anxiety or paranoia about reality. If you're experiencing distress about distinguishing real from fabricated content, or persistent doubt about your perceptions, please speak with mental health professionals. Healthy engagement with these issues involves critical thinking, verification habits, and community support, not isolation and epistemic uncertainty.